Everybody have their recording devices here? Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. Obviously, last night, late at night after the Canucks game, we completed a trade with the Vancouver Canucks. Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor heading to Vancouver. Danton Heinen coming back to Pittsburgh. Vincent Desharnais coming to Pittsburgh. The Rangers first round pick this year or next, and Melvin Fernstrom coming from Vancouver, who they picked in the third round this year, that we had highly rated in the draft last year, in the same bucket of players as Harrison Burdick and Tanner Howe that we picked 44 and 46. So we're really happy to get Melvin, obviously happy to get the pick, and happy to return players we think can come in and help our group, but obviously very difficult to move to players and people like Marcus and Drew. Obviously very high character, high quality, very popular people in the locker room, but pending free agents, and with where we're at, we have to just continue to move down the path of the mission that we've set out for the last year or so, which is to continue to stockpile younger players, prospects, and draft picks, and that was what we did last night. And it's sad to see Marcus and Drew go, but that's the hard thing about this position and this business at times. So, having said that, I'll turn it over for questions.
We'll start with Rossi.
Kyle, so if you could, the trade it's something you were talking about with Jim before the Rangers deal happened? Did the Rangers deal sort of spark it? And also a totally different area. Yesterday we get the cap escalations going up.
Right.
You have all these draft picks, especially in the first 3 rounds.
Right.
You've talked about sort of weaponizing the cap, and to talk about that mission, to enhance that mission. Do you see that as a more viable route now, given that you have all these draft picks and the cap going up?
Well, I think that it's probably 2 different answers. To answer your first question, the conversations with Patrick had been ongoing. They've had a long interest in Marcus. Obviously, it was a great trade for the Penguins, and Jim was the general manager here. As he alluded to last night, it was an excellent deal that worked out extremely well for the Penguins. So there's a deep familiarity and appreciation for Marcus and all that he does. So Patrick had come to me earlier in the week. We had been going back and forth about this for a while, and that he had another asset, or it looked like he was going to get another asset that he previously wasn't able to offer, and that being the prospect in Melvin Fernstrom that he was willing to part with, and the first round pick coming into play as well. So that was the way that materialized. With regards to the news of the salary cap agreement between the NHL and the NHLPA yesterday, and using our draft picks and using our cap space, I think the draft picks are great to have. We either have to execute on them and draft really good players, or use them to acquire players that fit what we're trying to do, and we'll certainly do that. How the increase in the cap will impact players being made available, I think that remains to be seen, and we'll get a strong handle on that. We'll use the time going up to the deadline to start to learn about that, and if there are moves that are there that make sense for us, we'll make them. But I think the other thing that we'll do is we'll use this time to gather information and be prepared for the time leading up for the draft and the off season.
Seth in front.
Kyle, you ship out 2 veterans. You also bring back 2 veterans with some term on their contracts. First, do you expect Dan and Vincent to be available for you to know just the logistics of traveling?
We have Jason Seidling on our staff, and he, for those who know him, will be unsurprised that he was on it last night very late, and informed me that the players should land here mid-morning. Both were excited to try to get here and want to be available. That'll ultimately be up to the route that their travel takes, whether it's on time, whether there are any issues, and then ultimately up to up to Sully and the coaching staff about how they want to deploy them. But we're working to make them an option, and we've got one of the best in the business on it.
And with those comings and goings, do you anticipate more opportunities or the possibility of more recalls from some of the players in Wilkes that have had some good seasons thus far?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we would like to do with the players from Wilkes is continues. They've really built a strong thing going down there in terms of their performance night in and night out. I like the way that they respond when things don't go well, and obviously I think it's been really pushed, especially of late, by the younger players that we've brought in here, draft or have acquired or were here before that have really come on. And so I think what we want to do with those players is when they earn the opportunity to come up and not just play for a weekend, but play for a prolonged stretch. Once they earn it, we're not going to deny them that opportunity.
Justin on the left.
Kyle, just curious, to the degree you're willing to share, to what extent did conversations with Marcus and his camp progress regarding the potential of an extension? And just was there a point in time where that no longer appeared to be a viable option?
Yeah, I think Marcus and Peter Wallen, his representative, have made it clear that he liked it in Pittsburgh, would like to have that conversation. I think I expressed this in September or October when in the preseason media, was that, and I met with Marcus and Drew personally after talking to people, was just that we felt that the best thing to do for us was to protect all of our options and not go down that path to lock anybody in without seeing how things progress through the season. So it wasn't from their lack of desire to be here, it was from us wanting to protect our options, see where the season was going, measure where we're at, and then measure what was best for the long run of the team. So it was our decision not to deeply engage in that.
Dan in the middle.
Kyle, maybe unlike last year when I know a lot of veterans with term weren't able to be moved, what are you finding the market for your players, and how are you finding this year's trade market maybe different than last year?
I think that's where Rob's question probably, if I was answering his as best I could have, I would have probably touched on that. I think, since the rumors of the cap, this agreement, and it always gets floated to what everyone projects it's going to be. In the past, I think, for the last number of years, going back to 2020, where it's been quite flat, there now seems to be a greater uptick in discussions or interest in players with term on their contracts, especially because as the cap is projected to go up, the value of those contracts will improve in the eyes of the league and just relative to the cap. So those have been, we're not in a mass rush to go down that path with any of our guys. The number of calls and interest has certainly increased and did so yesterday after that announcement further.
West in the middle.
Kyle, you mentioned, this trade being part of continuing down that path of, getting back to being one of those top contending teams. Mm-hmm. In the past, you've said it's kind of hard to nail down, a specific time frame on when that could be, but with, kind of the youth being introduced and the draft picks that you're stockpiling, can you really see that path starting to solidify at this point, like how you can see it moving forward and getting to that?
Absolutely. I think you never want to, for me, I don't want to ever put a timeline on anything, because our goal is based on the types of people that we have in the locker room and how much they've meant to the city, the franchise. We want to operate as urgently as we can to return the team there. We don't want to buy patience or say it's an X amount of years plan, and in year X we hope to be at different points. Our goal is to try to acquire the assets that we've laid out, and then either turn those draft picks and develop them into players that can help the team quickly, but not expedite it to hinder the development of the player, or use those assets to be in the mix when players that can make an impact our president can help us. And I think previously, even this season, it's been tough to get into those conversations for us, because we haven't had that level of asset to when a really good young player comes available, and now having multiple first round picks, seeing these younger players start to develop, it gets us more and more into that mix, and so we just have to keep moving down that path.
Matt in front there.
I know you're not going to pull out a whiteboard and show us everything you have up your sleeve, but do you anticipate making more moves over the next few weeks before the deadline? And then you've said when it comes to the players who have the no trade clauses that you want to respect that, you wouldn't approach those players. Has anything changed with those particular players?
No, I don't think anything has changed with those particular players. But some of them have, by nature of their language or the protection that they have to send us the list of teams they won't go to. I think as we've gone through this for the last year, there's been more communication from agents to us wondering, where does their player exactly stand in the mix. So some of that has been initiated from their side, but nothing other than just trying to inform their client of what may or may not happen here. But no real change to anything in that regard. And then going to the deadline, I think we're going to continue to have discussions that fit where we're at in our strategy, but we'll also try to be in the mix for any younger players that come available that can come in and help our team. So we'll try to use the collection of assets that we have now to try to add to the group if the right younger player comes available, and this collection of assets can get us into those discussions.
One or two more, I'll say more.
Kyle, you mentioned you guys liked Kurtzman from the last draft.
Yeah.
He plays in a really elite league over there.
Right.
He's acquitting himself well at a very young age.
Yeah.
What have you learned about him since the draft evaluation and sort of what he can bring to the organization?
Right. Well, I think the thing that stood out in the draft was that when we interviewed him, he was known as an offensive scoring winger, and when we interviewed him, it was very clear to us that his mindset was in the right spot. That his goal for this year was to earn a spot in the SHL and to play, knowing that that role wasn't going to be as a top two line scorer. And when we've watched him this year for Rebro, he's been highly competitive. As an 18-year-old, he's in their lineup every night. He's not playing in the top two lines. He's playing on the third or fourth line, second power play. But it's what he's doing in the games competitively. He's chipped in for an 18-year-old. He's got nearly 10 points, and he's been a very good player for the national team in the past. But I think for us, it's how you're going to have at some point, all these players that you draft are mostly, they've been top line players or top pair defensemen. Very rarely are you drafting someone from junior as a lower lineup guy, and unless it's late in the draft and you think that there's something that can pop. It's going to be how they adapt when they're lower in the lineup. Can they bring other elements when they're not scoring and they're not on the first unit power play? And in his case, that's what he's continued to show. But I think when we interviewed him at the draft, which was only 7-8 months ago now, he showed an understanding of what the development path was going to be like and what he was going to have to put into it, and that's what impressed us then. And then as we track all these guys, and Andy Sochier's department does this at an elite level, he is executing upon everything that he said, which I think for us is an important developmental attribute.
Alien back.
Kyle, with Vincent DeHarnay, just what kind of strengths do you see him bringing to this team, and do you see him kind of have some similarities to Petey as he looks to fill that void?
Yeah, I think it'd be unfair to compare Vincent to Petey, because I think Petey's one of the more underrated players in the league, especially amongst defensemen. Just solid every day, moves the puck effectively, and elite level defensive guy. Vincent, for us, like watching him in Edmonton, if you go back to even like watching him going back to college at Providence, his value is going to come defensively. So and on the penalty kill. So we're hopeful that he can take some of those minutes that Marcus had to eat a lot of on the penalty kill at even strength. It's just to use his reach and size to kill plays and add an element of some size and some physical play to our back end. So I don't think it's gone, as most guys when they change teams via free agency, I don't think it's gone as smoothly as they would have wanted. And for us, it's in working with Quinny and Sully, can we get him up and rolling to the level where he was at in Edmonton? And talking to him on the phone last night, I think he's eager to get in here and show that he can do that and will.
We have time for one more quick one, Seth.
Just what are your hopes for the remainder of the season from a competitive standpoint, and how do you avoid some of the malaise that some guys admitted set in before and after the trade with Jake Lester?
Yeah, I think last year was very instructive, honestly. So last year, we were in that mix, and what I tried to convey to the players is I think malaise is the right way to put it. was that, you know, all the other teams that were in that same mix as us also moved guys. Like Washington made the playoffs, they moved guys at the deadline, and they moved guys for a number of years before the deadline. Philly was in that mix, they had moved guys out. And so, you know, we weren't the only team in that mix that had sold. And I think if you go back and you look at that month of February, March, if we had not been in that spot, you know, we would have collected more points and then probably been in the playoffs. So my hope is this year, it's a little bit different in that some of the teams in the last number of weeks have separated. Very frankly, you know what it's. You know, even the Islanders, they've won. You know, the Islanders have won 6 straight games. Columbus, they don't seem to be slowing down. So we don't have the time if we want to make a run for it like we did last year. We don't have the time to see these points slip away. So I think, you know, we have to learn from. And I mean, I wasn't here the year before, but I think even in that stretch too. I mean, in the league with the young guys coming up from Wilkes-Barre that you'd asked about, my hope is that can provide us some energy, and we can learn from last season and propel ourselves to have a meaningful run through February, March, April.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thanks.
Guys,